Hello and welcome to Two Man Power Trip of Wrestling. My host JP John Poz. With me today, a very special guest. He's the author of the new WWF Rampage book, Mr. Lee Herbert. Lee, welcome in. How you doing?
I'm very well, John. How are you doing?
I'm doing very good. So, what's the latest? What's going on with WWF Rampage? Of course, meaning that it's the World Wrestling Federation's invasion of the British Isles, 1989 to 1993. What's going on with this new book?
That's right. Yeah. Thanks very much for having me on. First of all, to talk about it, I appreciate you having me on the podcast. Feel very honoured. So yeah, It's funny you mentioned the kind of the subtitle there, because that was the wording from President Jack Tunney it was in one of the Rampage programs. I'm not sure if it was. I think it might have actually been the first one. But yeah, so that was a direct quote from Jack Tunney. So that's why I went for that particular phrasing of the invasion of the British Isles. Yeah, the president himself. So yeah, it's been kind of about 18 months work on it, I would say. Definitely 1,000 hours plus put into it, interviews, research. And we launched officially last Friday. And I'm getting some great feedback so far. Thank you.
So with the book, though, what was like the genesis? Where did the idea come from? Like, how did this all come about?
Well, it's funny. I can remember how it came about. I can't remember exactly what triggered it. Excuse me. I can't remember. I must have seen something or read something or watched something, and I just thought to myself, oh, I really want to read the book about all the UK tours at the start of the 90s and how WWF got to be so big here that it could fill Wembley Stadium in 92. And I just assumed that the book had been written. So I remember going online to find the book that covered all this stuff. And it didn't exist. Well, if it does exist, it's very well hidden. It wasn't in any of the usual places. So at that point, I just decided I thought, well, if no one else has done it yet, it seems obvious to me. Why don't I give it a go? Because, SummerSlam 92 has obviously been talked about. It's been covered on the Davey Boy Smith biography, the A&E documentary they did. It's been talked about in other places. There have been articles written. But the story of how we got to there hasn't really been told before, not in any great detail. I mean, there were shows that happened in the UK that I didn't even know about till I started doing my research. There's a couple that aren't even on Cage Match. There's
Really?
There's yes, I'd managed to find a couple. Yeah. It's SummerSlam 92 is a part of this book, but that's I think it's chapter 15. So, this is the story of how we got there in a very short space of time, really.
I love it though. Like when you think about like the Hogan era, obviously, 84 really kicks off, Vince and Hogan, they're dominating the world globally. Slowly but surely, you see, like they dominated Canada, 70,000 people for the big event. I mean, they just keep going. And then eventually, obviously England, just absolutely catches fire, right? But you guys are well aware of Hulkamania is just sweeping the world.
Yeah, it's funny because although Hulk Hogan was a huge star here, I mean, every kid had a Hulk Hogan Hasbro toy, whether they knew what wrestling was or not. It was one of those things. But we missed the Hulkamania era, really. WrestleMania 3, WrestleMania 4, they were shown on our version of cable here, but cable never took off in this country like it did in the States. And it's something to touch upon in the book, actually. But we had a lot of laws around cable here that you don't have in the States, which made it really expensive, and it never took off. And it was only available on cable, those early WrestleMania shows. So we kind of missed out on the peak of Hulkamania. By the time it really arrived here in 89, Hulkamania had peaked at that point. But yeah, I mean, there was still Hulk Hogan merchandise on sale over here when he was in WCW. They were still selling his WWF stuff here, so he was a big star. But yeah, it's funny we did, and I think that's kind of the reason why as well. Bret Hart really became the biggest star in Europe, because we were just more aware of his career path, really. As he was coming into his peak, that's when we were starting to see more and more. So I think that's why Bret became the star he did in Europe, really, because we kind of missed out on the best years of Hulkamania, really. Although I do love WrestleMania 9, which everyone hates, but
yeah, I love it too. Yeah,
it's my favorite, and I know most people like rank it as one of the worst, but it's
I disagree. Yeah, I disagree. I like it. Did you see the documentary on WrestleMania 9 that was on Peacock?
No, do you know what? I haven't yet, and I have found a way, because we can't officially watch it in the UK, so you have to find different ways around it. It was the same with the A&E biographies and everything, but I have got it sorted now. I just haven't got around to watching it yet, because I want to really give it my full attention, because it's just one of my I talk about it in the book a couple of times, really. I think it just, when that arrived at that time, especially in the UK, kids that had got into it, it was just the perfect WrestleMania for kids, really. Like all the chloroform and the two doinks, all that crazy stuff. Yeah, I can see why, as a grown-up now, you'd watch it back and say, actually, some of this is pretty terrible. But at the time, when you were experiencing it as a kid, it was just the best WrestleMania. And the Hogan stuff at the end, I know a lot of people didn't like that, but again, like a surprise run-in title match at the end of a WrestleMania, it was amazing as a kid. So yeah, I do have a lot of fond memories of that show. Not everyone agrees.
Right, but they do that all the time now. Look at SummerSlam. I mean, they do the surprise run-in title change. So, I mean, WrestleMania 9 is kind of the precursor to that. I like it. I mean, the Steiner brothers are on it, Razor Ramon's on it, obviously Hogan, Bret. I mean, Money Inc. I mean, there's so many great stars. And I always liked WrestleMania 9. I never had any problems with it. I love the two doinks.
Yeah. I need to watch that documentary for sure, because it's
really good.
Like perfect documentary for me, to be honest.
It's really, really good. I was kind of surprised. I was like, I've heard these stories, but I thought it was great. And a lot of stuff I didn't know, and a lot of stuff that I guess didn't show before, some of the footage. So I thought it was awesome. So with that, though, obviously, Davey Boy's a huge star, Bret's a huge star, but even before that, what about like Big Daddy into the WWF? I know you obviously go into that in the book, but is that crazy or what? Like Big Daddy is kind of like a sports entertainer, but WWF, did he kind of path the way there, or did he kind of lead the path?
Yeah, it's funny, because there is a chapter in the book about kind of the end, because the arrival of the WWF in this country coincided with the end of British wrestling on TV. So yeah, that's kind of part of the setup in the book, but I had to cut out a lot of that because there is so much. We're talking about decades and decades of television wrestling. So I had to cut a lot of it out in the end, because I'd just gone way off topic. But yeah, you're right. I mean, even when British wrestling arrived on TV, the exact year will escape me now, but it was straight into prime time in I think it was talking 1950s, might have been 1953, something like that. But it was straight, 3:00 in the afternoon prime time. It was, everyone watched it. Millions of people watched it. It was always among the, kind of top 20 highest rated shows in the UK. Prince Philip from, the royal family, he'd be going to the show. It was a huge thing. And then there was a massive, massive boom in the 60s. And then a lot of the promoters, we kind of had our own version of the NWA here called Joint Promotions. And it was a similar thing. It was a territory system, obviously on a much smaller scale in the UK, because we're tiny compared to the States. But it was the same thing, swapping talent, keeping out of each other's areas. A lot of those promoters started selling up after the 60s, because they just made so much money, because it was such a big business, wrestling. So I had a bit of a dip, and then, getting to your question, sorry. Big Daddy came along, and then it just went crazy. They did the Wembley Arena shows, and actually, it's one of those Big Daddy shows still holds the record for the highest rated wrestling show on British TV.
Wow!
Because of course it was on our version of network television, if you like, whereas the WWF has always been on subscription channels. So Big Daddy holds the record still, I believe.
Awesome.
But yeah, that was the thing. But then what what happened was towards the end. So joint promotions, sort of like I say, our version of the NWA, they had exclusive slots on the TV, exclusive coverage rights on the TV slots. That came to an end in the mid-80s. So two other companies got a slot. One was All Star Wrestling, and one was the WWF, actually. So we started getting a few WWF shows on our version of network TV in the mid-80s. But really, Big Daddy had gone, by that point, the Wembley Arena shows where he was our Hulk Hogan, essentially, it had gone the other way now. He'd just been used too much, and the matches were all exactly the same. And really, it turned wrestling into a bit of a joke. So yeah, it's weird. He was at the same time the most loved and the most hated wrestler, probably, because everyone loved him because he was this larger than life character. But so many people thought he'd really turned wrestling into a joke by the end. And by that point, when All Star and WWF started getting a share of the coverage, it was just so much better than what we'd been seeing on joint promotions with Big Daddy, etc. So he did pave the way because he brought a lot of people to wrestling shows. And I suppose then when wrestling was taken off TV in '88, it left that gap then for the WWF in '89 to really push on. So yeah, he paved the way, but he did almost kind of kill it all as well because his matches were all exactly the same and not very good.
When you look at it, right? I mean, obviously WWF comes in, but do you think that it was like the US was kind of not fading because it was still super popular, but do you think that the UK rise coincides with the US kind of maybe falling off?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a kind of a theme of the book, really. I mean, when you go through Wrestling Observer newsletters from 91, you'll find, many occasions in there, ratings have hit an all-time low in America. And then there'd be a note, the next UK tour is probably sold out by the time you've read this. And It's funny when I was looking back at it, Dave Meltzer actually predicted in 91 that the European tours over the next couple of years were going to prove to be more successful than shows in the US, and that we would get a major pay-per-view. So yeah, in those years, there was a feeling that things in America were heading into some dark days, really. But yeah, at the same time, things were incredible here. And it was, while house shows are getting cancelled in America, they were putting on an extra matinee show in Manchester here because they just couldn't. There weren't enough seats really to sell. Everything was selling out and selling out so quickly. It was incredible. So yeah, it's interesting that, and when you look back as well, I mean, some of the problems the World Wrestling Federation were having, all the Gulf War controversy with Slaughter and all that angle, we were kind of oblivious to all that here, because in our media coverage of the WWF, it was all kayfabe stuff. Like it's unbelievable, really. I mean, getting slightly off topic now, but I mean, obviously now the company as WWE is more successful than it's ever been, in terms of money and the multi-billion-dollar streaming deals and all this kind of stuff. But in terms of being in the national consciousness, those years in the early 90s here was unbelievable. I mean, you'd pick up a national newspaper and there would be a 2-page report on WrestleMania 7 written in kayfabe. And this is in a national newspaper. Like, people are reading the Daily News and they're reading about what happened at WrestleMania in America. Like, it's just, yeah, so they're making more money here now than ever, but it was everywhere in the early 90s. And Bret Hart would be in the newspaper, like they'd feature a pop star or a movie star. And yeah, I think unless you live through it, it's different. It's quite hard to comprehend in a lot of ways how big it was here and how it was just inescapable, really.
Love it. Love to hear like the popularity of wrestling. So, were you always a big fan? Did you go to these shows? Were you a part of this phenomenon?
Well, I think part of doing this is kind of a cathartic thing really as well, because I never did. And when SummerSlam was going on, that same month, I was at a Big Daddy show in Wales. So while Davey Boy Smith was wrestling in front of 80,000 people at Wembley, I was watching Big Daddy in front of 200 people in a marquee in Wales. But yeah, I kind of lived in quite a rural area, and I mean, for my parents to, number one, for them to take me to wrestling would have been quite difficult, but to convince them to travel quite a long distance would have been, yeah, it was never going to happen. So I never got to a show in this era. So I think this is part of me kind of getting over that now.
Yeah, it's cathartic, right?
Researching it and kind of feeling like I've lived it. But yeah, I was a fan then, and really, I think one of the main reasons I got into it was what I was just mentioning there about the media coverage, because my parents didn't get a national newspaper; they just got the local one. But my granddad used to get a newspaper called the Daily Mirror, which is one of the biggest selling newspapers in the UK. And I always used to go there on a Saturday, and I would see in the newspapers all this coverage about the World Wrestling Federation, which seems crazy that you're learning this stuff from a newspaper, but they'd have wall charts in there. I mean, you can see those on eBay. There's probably one on eBay at the moment, but they used to do these pull-out wall charts, and every day in the newspaper, there'd be a little picture to cut out and stick on your wall chart. So they did a WrestleMania 9 one, actually. So yeah, you'd have like a build it yourself poster out of the daily newspaper. Like, it was just like, and all this kind of stuff. And they'd run, and Merlin did a trading card collection. That was all launched through the Daily Mirror newspaper. You'd collect some tokens, get your first pack free, obviously, because once you've got one pack, then you're in, aren't you? So a lot of my exposure came through going to my grandparents' house and seeing it in the newspaper, because it was on a subscription TV service, which we didn't get for a few years. It was kind of out of reach for a lot of people. So, and a lot of people I spoke to for the book were in the same situation as me, where they discovered the WWF not through ever watching it on TV, but through seeing a Hulk Hogan Hasbro figure in a toy shop, through seeing a magazine on the newsagent shelf. So everyone was kind of learning about it through other means before they'd ever actually seen any wrestling on TV. Because at the turn of the 90s, only 1 in 20 households had Sky Television. So if you're a kid that saw a Hulk Hogan figure, there's only a 1 in 20 chance that you're going to be able to go home and watch him on TV. So this whole tape trading thing began at schools, and that's how I used to watch the show. So I had a friend in school that would record it, and the tapes would get passed around. And this was very common in schools all through the UK. And yeah, it just became like this, at first, like this bit of an underground thing, but then it just blew up, and yeah, more people started getting Sky TV and access. But yeah, that's how a lot of people did it.
I have some Merlin cards, like Sergeant Slaughter, like a bunch of like random like Merlin cards. I don't know where the heck I got them from, but
amazing. Well, funnily enough, in the book, I've interviewed 2 of the founders of Merlin Publishing, who created the trading card sets and the sticker albums. It's one of my favorite bits of the book, to be honest, because it's just kind of one of those nerdy subjects that I just get really excited about, like hearing about. Even there was a section that I had to cut from the book just because I realized I'd gone too far into like the nerdiness. I was asking how they used to fill like the packets of stickers and the trading cards without having, a pack full of the same 6 cards or what have you. And they were talking me through all the processes of how they used to produce the stickers in the factory and everything. I was like, I was in my element, but I thought, I can't print all this. It's good. I've gone too far down the rabbit hole. But it's one of my favorite parts of the book, because it was the WWF that saved their company. Essentially, they had left Panini and gone to set up their own company. And the guy that had bought Panini out, which led to everyone leaving, he was trying to sue them for different things. And they took a gamble on this license and the World Wrestling Federation. And if it didn't work, they were basically going to lose their going to lose their houses, lose their cars, everything. So they took this gamble on this new thing that had just arrived in the UK, and it turned out that they sold millions and millions of packets of stickers, and it was a happy ending, really. But yeah, it's a really interesting story.
Man, you never know, like, how the genesis of certain things are going to be. Like, hey, we were from Panini, and then we started in Merlin. Like, yeah, it's crazy when you really kind of dig deep into it.
Yeah, that's a crazy story in itself, that one. But yeah, the guy that bought out Panini, he was he became quite infamous for all the wrong reasons. But yeah, if you can Google him and read all about him, But yeah, it was crazy because and the reason that they bought the license to do the WWF sticker albums, because it was all official, but it was actually the fact that their kids in school were part of the tape trading scene. And one of the guys that I'd spoke to, Mark, like he said, all these, because we used to have everyone used to have stacks of blank tapes for recording shows.
Yes.
And he noticed that all these tapes kept going missing, from the house. There'd never be any tapes around. He couldn't understand where they were going. And then he found out that his son was swapping them around in school. So that was kind of one of the things that triggered it, really, the fact that, and then the other guy that spoke to as well, Peter, they got talking about it together, and he found that his son had been doing the same thing. He's like, oh yeah, and he was a few years older, but he's like, oh yeah, they're all into it. So I think that was kind of, I'll have to check back, but I was kind of 1990. So yeah, there's this, it was really the school thing that really took off, and grown-ups started to notice it and think, we've got to get involved with this. So yeah, it's
definitely
stories. Yeah.
So the Rampage, if you will, and the Rampage again and all those tours, you missed them, but I'm sure you were able to go back and watch them and the VHS tapes and everything. Yeah. You loved them, right? I mean, it's so cool, so unique. I know sometimes you get like a rematch or like Hogan again or something like that, but they were great. I mean, they did not take it easy over there. They always had great shows.
Yeah, and I think the atmosphere was a big part of that. I think when you've got a really good atmosphere at a show, I think it elevates everything. And even UK Rampage 93, which is a pretty terrible show, but you wouldn't know it from the crowd reactions because everyone is so into it. And then, when the crowd are getting into it, you can get in, you can let yourself go and be immersed in it a bit more. Because, I think when you watch wrestling and the crowd are trying to be disruptive, it takes me out of it. If they're going against the grain and just trying to kind of, and we've all seen shows like that when that's happened. It does take me out of it, because then I'm thinking about the crowd reacting in a certain way rather than what I'm watching. But with all these UK shows, everyone was into it. They would just go absolutely crazy for the slightest thing. In the very first UK show in '89 that was shown live on Sky, Savage and Hogan, they probably only wrestled for about half of the match. The first probably 7 minutes is them just playing to the crowd. Savage throws a chair at Hogan, which he catches, he puts it down in the ring and sits on it, and the crowd are just going absolutely crazy. And they're not doing anything, but you get into it because the crowd are just going with it and loving it. And I think that's what makes the show special, because I think objectively, if you watch some of those matches back with the sound off, you'd probably think, actually, this isn't great. But it's the atmosphere around it, I think, that really made them special. But Rampage 92 is probably my favorite of the Rampage shows. But then you've got Battle Royal at the Albert Hall.
Yes.
Which is just, it's just iconic, just the look of it and everything. We've got
the cool venue. Yep.
Yeah, you've got, the luxurious red velvet seats, and then, you've got the Nasty Boys coming out. It's that kind of, it's that contrast, I think, that really just, makes it really special. And also that was where The Undertaker really had his first special entrance. The Phantom of the Opera entrance. I don't know if you've seen that one.
Yes. Yes.
That was kind of the first time he'd had a special entrance. So yeah, some really cool moments. And the other thing I love about, excuse me, not used to this podcast because I haven't trained my throat muscles yet. But the thing I love about those shows as well, the ones where you've got Bobby Heenan and Gorilla Monsoon on there, I just feel like in the UK the shackles were completely off. Like Heenan is absolutely hilarious on the UK shows. I don't know if it's because the Rampage shows weren't being shown in the US. I don't know if it was just a bit more like, yeah, just do what you want tonight, Bobby type thing. But yeah, right. Just absolutely brilliant in commentary. But all this stuff as a package together, yeah, they just make them great. Yeah, legendary.
I feel like the venues, that's just like a cool like little thing. Like the Royal Albert Hall is obviously Wembley, one of the coolest venues. I just feel like the UK, I don't know, it's like almost like match made in heaven, if you will, with wrestling and some of the venues.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the wrestling at the Albert Hall had been going on for decades, and then it came to an end because I think there used to be boxing on there as well, and then I think some license got revoked. I'd have to look at the full story behind it, but there had in previous decades been shows of that type there, and really then the WWF brought it back. But yeah, definitely have had some good venues for wrestling. Yeah, and Wembley Stadium, that was just perfect, really. Bit of a gamble with there being no roof on the stadium, but it all worked out in the end.
Yeah, true. You're always susceptible to maybe the bad weather, if you will. It is surprising though when you think about it, it's like how popular can WWF be? It's like in the States, yes, obviously WrestleMania 8 or whatever, obviously drew 70,000. I mean, it still was a big crowd. But going elsewhere and going out of the country, SummerSlam '92 without Hogan too, you would think like, oh, I don't know how well it's going to do, and it draws over 80,000 people at Wembley with Bret Hart and Dynamite, or excuse me, Davey Boy Smith, and then obviously British Bulldog, and then obviously Macho Man and Flair, or excuse me, Macho Man and Warrior with Flair kind of there as well, kind of the mystery guy of where he's going to be in the corner. Were you surprised like how popular it still was there? Just as far as like, wow, 80,000 people, 1992. I mean, it's nuts.
I think when I've gone back and looked at the circumstances that led to it, not surprised in the slightest. I mean, they probably could have done 2 nights in a row, and done the same the next night. It just penetrated the culture here. I mean, the video for SummerSlam '92. So we didn't have Coliseum video in the UK. We had a company called Silver Vision. They actually they'd done a deal with Coliseum. I interviewed the founder of the company for the book as well. So he did a deal with Coliseum to release the videos over here. And the SummerSlam '92 video, he sent me a photograph of the plaque that he'd received. So it sold within a matter of months over £1 million in revenue. So it wasn't 1 million copies. It generated £1 million in revenue in the space of a few months. And that was the videotape of the event afterwards. So that gives you an idea of how many people were kind of hungry for this stuff. But yeah, going back and looking at it now, I'm really not surprised because the Rampage tours before it had just been so successful. And when I spoke to Barry Darso, aka the Repo Man, aka Demolition Smash,
yes,
he said to me, because there was a day in Manchester where they did 2 shows in the same day, and the same arena, both sold out. And like he said to me, in the States, yeah, we might do a double shot, we might do 2 shows in a day, but in different towns, it wouldn't be in the same building the same day,
Right.
You'd do one in the, midday here, and then you travel across to this place, you do one at 5 o'clock here or whatever it was. But he said when they found out they work in the same building on the same day twice, he couldn't get his head around it. It was just kind of unheard of, really. So, no, people were so hungry for it here. Any opportunity, really, just people were fighting to be amongst it, really. So, yeah, I think if they'd done they do 2 nighters for everything now. I think if they'd done it for SummerSlam '92, I think they could have pulled it off then as well.
It is crazy. Like this year, SummerSlam, they did 113,000 people, in the 2 nights. Obviously they did a giant stadium and they they blocked off part of the stadium for the entranceway, but just just crazy when you look at it like, man, they could sell out that many tickets, make that much money, make that much off of merch 2 nights in a row. And 92 could have easily pulled that off back then.
Yeah, I think so. I think it had reached its peak here, and what's amazing is that, you know, in 1988, you know, our British wrestling, like I say, was taken off TV because the station didn't think it wasn't what they wanted people watching. They thought pro wrestling. Yeah, there's a new guy that came in called Greg Dyke on ITV, and he just thought wrestling was, you know, it was kind of for the lower classes, and, you know, it wasn't what we want to be associated with. So in 1988, he's taken it off TV, and then 4 years later, you go on, you know, on BBC One, and you might see Rowdy Roddy Piper on an English BBC TV show as a guest. Hacksaw Jim Duggan was on a show we had called Games Master, which was like a computer game show in the early 90s over here. He'd be on there. Then on a Saturday morning, he'd be on a show called Going Live, which was like a kids magazine show. And this was all on BBC prime time. And you're seeing WWF wrestlers on all these things.
Taking over.
And that's 4 years after someone decided wrestling was too lowbrow for TV. Wow. And it went full set, and it was, so it's quite amazing, really. But yeah, Hacksaw Jim Duggan made some very memorable appearances on our TV shows in the early 90s.
WWF took over, huh? That's crazy.
Yeah, I think this is the thing, really, because I know everyone knows about SummerSlam 92, but not everyone realizes just how big it was here, and how it would just be on. You sat, you know, I'm not talking WWF shows. WWF stars would just be on our entertainment shows. It would be in our newspapers. It was just, you know, they started making things over here like, you know, Easter eggs and bubble bath. It was just every bit of merch you can imagine. The bubble gum. Did you have those in the States? The bubble gum stuff.
Yep. Oh yeah. Yep.
Yeah, cool. It was just it was relentless, really. It was everywhere. Little pin badges were really big here. There was a company called DeFort that made these little cartoonish pin badges. Again, you can find those on eBay.
Right. Pretty
cool.
Those
are really, it was anything you could buy with a wrestler on. We had crisps as well. Well, you'd call them potato chips in the States. Yeah. But we had those over here that were exclusive to the UK, made by a company called Red Mill. So we had Undertaker spicy beef flavor, macho. Oh, what was the macho flavor? Bret Hart was pickled onion. I remember that. Was macho might have been cheese, but yeah, we had 3 flavors. We had a TV advert for World Wrestling Federation corn snacks. Like, it's just, it's to say it took over 91, 92 would be an understatement. And that, which makes it all the more crazy how it kind of dropped off, really, after 93.
Man, it's crazy, because that's like, they're all over the place. They're like basically became a part of the culture over there for a while. It seems
absolutely. Like. Yeah, very much so. You know, and Sky Television, which was a subscription service, satellite TV, all their marketing was around. They had their two big things were The Simpsons and the World Wrestling Federation. And that's what they did. That's how they got people to buy Sky Television before they got Premier League football rights. It was Simpsons and the WWF. That was, and it just became a part of the culture. And that's why now, all these years later, you've got people like me who are still, you know, looking back at those few years and just reminiscing about what an amazing time it was, really.
How about Bret? We were talking about, obviously, how popular he was over there. So the loss at SummerSlam doesn't hurt at all, huh? He just, his momentum, I guess, he wins the title a few months later, basically less than a few months later. And, you know, and he's off to the races there. But that loss didn't hurt him at all, huh? Did that actually help him, losing to Davey Boy?
Yeah, without that match, I don't think he wins the title from Flair when he does. I still think he would have been champ one day, but I think maybe it would have been another couple of years down the line. I think that match really, I think that's where he proved that he could be a main eventer because, and it's funny really because in America that wasn't actually the main event. SummerSlam '92, it was marketed in the States as being Savage Warrior main event.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I mean, it's easy to now to look back on that and say, oh, well, obviously it was Bret and Davies the main event, which it was here. But it was a big risk, that match, because like I say, it was, as you mentioned earlier, it was the first pay-per-view without Hogan in there. You know, the IC title, it was a secondary title. It wasn't, it wasn't the big title. It was your upper mid-card belt. Neither Davey or Bret had been positioned as main event guys. So you've got, upper mid-card guys with an upper mid-card title in a main event of a first pay-per-view without Hogan. So, yeah, it was, I can see why they decided to push Warrior and Savage on the posters in the States, because they were probably worried that this might go wrong. But yeah, over here, everyone knew what the real main event was. And I'm glad that it did go on last, because that would just, it would not have been the same if they hadn't done that. But going back to your question, no, it absolutely didn't hurt him one bit. And it's funny because the crowd is very much divided. I mean, I was Team Bret, and there was a lot of people like that. It very much split the country down the middle.
Surprisingly so.
Yeah, because definitely that was kind of the power of Bret over here. Really, people didn't want to boo him. So everyone cheered when Davey won, but at the same time they still couldn't help cheering for Bret. During the match at times, and during his entrance, it was a very mixed reaction. But yeah, it didn't hurt him one bit. I mean, everyone knows, what a performance he put in, and I think it was the match that put him on the map. And even in defeat, he proved that he could run the show in a main event. And I think it was that match that got him the belt when was it 2 months later, Saskatoon, wasn't it?
Yes.
But yeah, I don't think without him doing what he did for Davey that night, I don't think they'd have put it on him that soon. I think it would have been, maybe a year, 2 years later.
Crazy to think about it, like the pressure. It's like, okay, we have Macho Man and Warrior, kind of like the two other big stars other than Hogan and like the previous eras, the two kind of previous champions, so to speak. And it's like, wow, they're not going to be the main event. We're going to put Dave Boy and Bret on last. I mean, just the pressure of it is crazy. And then them to deliver, and people still talk about it. And literally, WWF, what was it, 2 months ago, they just put out it's the greatest SummerSlam match of all time on their website. So, and on YouTube. So it's like, wow, they're still talking about the match. They're still giving it a lot of credit. So it's not like, they didn't execute excellently, if you will, if I could say that, but they killed it. I mean, it was just like the right decision and the two right guys to do it.
Yeah, I know. I saw that and I thought that is quite funny because, like I say, at the time, they didn't want to push that as the main event in the States. So worried. But so that just shows really that, I think, and maybe that's what kind of spurred Bret on a bit as well. Maybe he took that a bit personally and thought, well, why are you talking about Savage Warrior rather than us? So maybe that's what gave him that bit of extra pep in his step as well. just to prove it to everyone that he was the real main event. Yeah,
I love it too, because it's like sometimes when you have like bigger names in the main event, sometimes it's not as good. And you're like, oh, that match should have been the main event. You know what I mean? Like, and they nailed it. Like, that should have been the main event. I mean, just perfect.
Yeah, but I mean, Warrior and Savage was actually a really good match.
That match is actually awesome. Yeah, so that extra added pressure to Bret. It's like, you better be better than this, because that match is actually really good.
Yeah, it was actually really good. I mean, but I don't think they could have got away with the finish to that, though, as a main event.
Yes, non-finish, yeah.
The match itself was really good. And but yeah, in terms of the other matches, it's funny. Something I mentioned in the book is how I don't think that card today, I don't think they'd have been able to have got away with it because a lot of the card, they ignored all the major feuds on TV at the time. So, today, if they were to run a SummerSlam this year and just kind of pluck some of the matches out of thin air and say, all right, well, Cody, you're going to have Jacob Fatu, and and just kind of mix it up, and then just ignore what had been going on TV. Online it would just be mayhem, wouldn't it? There would be outrage everywhere.
Yeah.
But yeah, when you look back at the matches at SummerSlam '92, there were so many feuds that could have been. We could have had the payoff to there, and they just kind of ignored them and just threw some random matches together for some of it. An example, I mean, LOD and the Beverly Brothers, one example. Trying to think of some more now. Oh, Undertaker, Berserker. I think there's about 5 or 6 examples I gave in the book of where. Warrior. Would it be Warrior Papa Shango? Yeah, I should have had the book in front of me. But yeah. It's funny, the card was just kind of some of it kind of thrown together. Even Bret and Davey was quite a last minute thing, but the fact that it all came together and was so amazing, so memorable, I think just shows that sometimes it's not all about really long-term planning and long stories and all this kind of. Sometimes it's just about a moment and. Just generating excitement, and it's strange really that they managed really to pull off such an amazing show with ignoring so many of the feuds that were going on. But yeah, it was a really good show. I mean, some of the dark matches as well. The opening match with Jim Duggan and the Bushwhackers. The crowd reaction for it, you would think it was a WrestleMania main event. And it's just a dark match with Duggan and the Bushwhackers taking on, the Mountie and Jimmy Hart's crew. But yeah, just watching that dark match, you realise what a special moment it is. Every single thing has been treated like a main event, and yeah, I think that's what sets wrestling apart from any other form of entertainment. Really, it's that being able to do that. Really.
They always want, like a WrestleMania over there, and everyone always says, "Well, look at the crowd at SummerSlam '92, and look how into they were." Like that's like a perfect place to to have a WrestleMania. If they're acting like that for Doug and the Bushwhackers, against like Nasty Boys and Mountie, they you know what I mean. Like that's kind of like look at this crowd; they are so amped and ready for like big shows. They're like the perfect. So I feel like a WrestleMania over there would be great. And everyone always points to SummerSlam '92. They were amped. It's just an awesome crowd.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I don't think we're ever getting a WrestleMania, and probably some people probably aren't gonna agree or particularly like that view. But I think realistically, I don't think it's ever going to happen because of what WrestleMania is now, and I think the money that would need to be put up front and really. We're just not really built for it. And the thing is, as well, Nick Khan, there was the WrestleMania, not last year. There was one recently with really bad weather. It was freezing cold. So would it have been the year before last?
I was there, Philly. Yeah, that was cold. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah, Philly. So after that show, Nick Khan said that's never happening again at a WrestleMania. As in, we're not running it in weather conditions like that where people are freezing, because it did really hurt the atmosphere. You could tell people were cold.
It was freezing. Yeah, I was lucky. I was I snuck into a VIP booth and there was heat in there, so I got lucky. But I know it was cold.
All right, so you're living the high life. You're okay there.
Yes.
But yeah, so a problem we've got in this country is the weather, and it's a bit of a cliche, British people talking about the weather, but we have got that problem, and which would be fine if we had stadiums with roofs on. But the new Wembley doesn't have a roof on it. The new Tottenham Hotspur Stadium doesn't have a roof on it. Arsenal doesn't. So big stadiums around London, you're open to the elements, and it could go badly wrong at that time of year. So that I think the only places nearby that've got one big stadium with the roof, I think Dublin has got one maybe, but yeah, it's just we're not set up for it, and our weather is too unpredictable. So that is one big reason. But I just think as well, it's what WrestleMania isn't a day anymore. It's not even 2 days. It's a week and probably maybe even 2 weeks. And I'm just not sure we're kind of set up for it, and that our government would put up the millions of dollars that would kind of win the bid. I think, maybe we might get something else, a Royal Rumble, maybe, like say in that, if that stadium in Dublin that has a roof, or wherever else. Obviously Dublin, not technically the UK. I must make it clear that I do realise that. So yeah, we might get something else, but I just, unfortunately, I mean, as much as I'd love it, I just don't think we're ever getting a WrestleMania. Sorry, guys.
Now,
maybe another SummerSlam, though. Maybe another SummerSlam.
Yeah. Now, as far as just like go back to that era of around SummerSlam 92, 93, it starts to fall off, though, right? I mean, it starts to wane a bit. I mean, it's because of the new generation, they weren't feeling it, or like how come it kind of crashes just a bit, obviously, before obviously the Attitude Era hits and it starts up again. What happens?
Well, it's crazy. I don't really think it was so much. It was a combination of things, really, but it wasn't just kind of the new generation stuff. I think WWF, I think they stopped putting as much effort in here. I mean, Vince was very distracted with federal investigations around that time.
Yep.
So there was a lot going on within the company, and so that contributed to it, because, and like I say, the Rampage 93 show was pretty appalling, really. I mean, I kind of feel sorry for the crowd, because they're so enthusiastic, they're so giving, and they're getting, I think it was Mr. Perfect versus Samu, and just these kind of matches just thrown together. It wasn't a great card. So yeah, we weren't being treated, and that was that was kind of 7 months or something, 8 months after SummerSlam 92.
I don't even remember that show. Luger Duggan? I don't even remember that.
Yeah, you don't need to watch that one. That was a real low point, really. But so yeah, that was part of it, but it wasn't the only reason, though. It's unfair to say that. I mean, because it was such a big thing for kids, what kids are like. A lot of them jump from one thing to another, and it had been so big here. It was a craze. It'd taken over all these schools everywhere. And as some of these kids were getting 2-3 years older, they were getting interested in other things. So that was part of it too. Premier League football, or soccer as you'd say, that had just launched, 92-93 season. Merlin started making the sticker albums for that. So these are the things. Then we had a big music explosion as those kids were getting a little bit older. We had Oasis and Blur coming in, and people were really getting interested in music. So yeah, as the product dipped here, and they weren't really making any effort with the tours here, at the same time we were getting all this other new exciting stuff coming in. And then the kids that left it never came back to it. Some obviously did stick with it, and then it started to pick up again by 97. But yeah, it's a tough one to answer, but a lot of it is just kids getting interested in something else. Because before WWF, it was Teenage Mutant. Actually, over here, I almost said Ninja Turtles. In this country, I don't know if you know this, it was Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles.
Oh, no idea. Wow,
really? In the book as well.
Wow, we didn't realize that. What the heck?
Yeah, crazy times, the early 90s over here. So it was politicians were actually debating the danger of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles influencing kids here and turning them into ninjas. And there was a concern that kids were going to be crawling into sewers. And but yeah, one of the things that the BBC did, they changed the name to Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles.
Wow, that's so weird.
One of the things that they had to do to please people. Yeah, so yeah, crazy times. But yeah, so that had been a crazy. He-Man had been big here, Thundercats. So awesome. There were always things coming in and taste changing. WWF was bigger than all of those crazes, and it lasted longer than all of them. But yeah, it just kind of like anything that burns that bright, it's gonna fade pretty fast as well. I think it was just kind of a victim of its own success really for a while. But yeah, you're absolutely right. It did come back, and then we had the one night only, which was kind of the, well, it wasn't really the birth of the Attitude Era, but that was very much at the start of the Attitude Era, and kind of the end result that night was very different to SummerSlam '92. And then that kicked it off, and then in '98 we were getting shows like Capital Carnage and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, maybe that's the next book. I won't say
it. Yeah, hopefully this one does well, and he get to roll and do the next one. That would be great. So as we start to hit the wind down here, we head towards the finish. Just a couple of quick hitters. What was your favorite piece of merchandise during that era?
Oh, that's a very, very tough question. But there is something that I do keep looking for on eBay, and one came up very recently, and I hesitated, and I didn't get it. So SummerSlam '92, they produced like baseball caps in 3 or 4 colors. So I want the lime green one. I'm looking for it in mint condition. So if anyone's got one, you can hit me up now. But one came up very recently on eBay. It looked to be in pretty immaculate condition for its age. And I hesitated. Someone else got it. But there was a gold one as well, which was very nice from that day. But in terms of merchandise that I had, I say that weirdly, it was those pin brooches. I absolutely loved those. I had an LOD one, which just absolutely loved, and a Papa Shango one I really liked as well. But really, it was the Hasbro figures, and I've written a chapter on Hasbro in the book, which it's not a full history of the Hasbro lines because those books have been done, and it just doesn't really fit with what I was doing. So more I've kind of really gone back and looked at some of the media coverage of those at the time. I didn't realize how successful they were, actually, the Hasbro line. And then kind of the people that still collect them today, and fans that still have their old collections or are still collecting the ones they had as kids. So I think the Hasbro toys were very special.
The best. I love those. I feel like they're iconic. But who was your guy? Who's your favorite wrestler? And do you have a favorite match from that wrestler?
Okay, so favorite wrestler. If I'm really honest, the one that got me interested in it was the Ultimate Warrior, and it was purely aesthetics. I'd never seen him wrestle, which was possibly a good thing. But it was just his look, really. Like, you'd see, like I say, this merch was everywhere, and you walk into a shop and see the Ultimate Warrior on anything, a magazine or a badge or a cup or whatever it was. And as a kid, you couldn't help but just think, like, he looks like the most incredible person, like this superhero. Yep. So that's who got me hooked. But then I was a Bret guy then through and through. When I really started getting into it, and that was the case for a lot of people in the UK. As I say, I think this is I think the UK and Canada is where he's always had his biggest success. But I would say that we probably rival Canada for Bret fandom over here. He's actually coming over to do a spoken word show here in a week or two, which I've got a ticket for, and meet and greet.
Awesome.
Very excited for. Yeah, because I've got a poster that Hacksaw signed for me that I need him to sign, so I'm going to that. But yeah, that just shows he's still coming over here now, and everything's sold out. It's just for a meet and greet and a spoken word thing. That's through Inside the Ropes. So yeah, people here now still love Bret, and he was like a pop star here at the time. The Daily Mirror would have full page spreads on him, and there'd be interviews with him in kayfabe, and it was like he was some sort of film star here in '92. It's unbelievable, really. But favorite match, it's really hard not to say. Say Bret and Davey at SummerSlam '92, really. But I do love the Albert Hall show. yeah, it's really, really tough to pick. And to be honest, some of the matches, because I'm kind of viewing them through modern day eyes as well and judging them on the matches. I don't know. I think Battle Royal at Albert Hall's my favourite show, but yeah, I can't say anything other than Bret and Davey for best match, because it was one of the best matches of all time, and it made it one of the most important pay-per-views of all time, I think. So I can't. Absolutely. It's really boring, but I can only go with that. But Battle Royal at Albert Hall, that entire show, yeah, I'll take that.
Love it. Now, where can everybody find the book and get the book? Socials and websites, obviously, as well, so they can go out and buy it.
Yeah, so it will be appearing in a couple of other places soon, but at the moment, links are on my social media profiles. So I'm now on X, which that's a recent thing, but yeah, Facebook and Instagram. So yeah, there's a link through there at the moment. You can just do an online purchase, and it is available in States and Canada as well as in the UK. So we've got there's an equivalent distributor, etc., in the US and in Canada. So it's not going to be affected by tariffs or anything like that. It will be, the American books will be printed in the US and sent locally in the US. So yeah, there's none. You don't need to worry about any of that stuff. Just I think it does take a little bit longer to deliver in the US, but it's within a couple of weeks. If you want,
what's your social? What is it?
So just to double check that. So on Instagram, it's just WWF Rampage book, all one word. So that's WWF Rampage book, all one word. That's Instagram. Facebook, it's just Rampage book. Nice and easy. And then on X, I'm just making sure I'm getting this right. It's at Lee Herbert Words. So yeah, at Lee Herbert Words, all one word.
Nice.
And yeah, you can find me on there. And yeah, if you to be honest, when I wrote it, I didn't really expect that anyone outside the UK would be interested in it. I think because it's completely written from a British perspective, whereas most WWE content, it's all produced, created in the States, which for obvious reasons. So this is very much a British take on it, and I did wonder whether people in the States would be interested in it. But I've had quite a few people that say they're interested in reading about it because they didn't know about some of these shows. And
yeah, or if you did know about it, they're awesome. You wanted to read more about the show because they were great.
Yeah, and like say some of the merch and things like that were UK exclusives and things like that. So there's so I think there is stuff in it for everyone really. But yeah, I hope some of you get a copy and enjoy it.
All right, awesome. Lee, thank you so much for all the time today. Really appreciate it. Everybody get out there and buy Rampage.
Thank you so much for having me.